Hello, this is Tempo Afric TV's Ma'ad Zeta program, and I'm your host, Petros Haile. Our guest for today is Mr. Mohammed Saleh Idris, also known as Mr. Mohammed Saleh Majaurai. Our guest is the Eritrean Muslim active member of the Eritrean Muslim community in Minnesota, and is here to discuss the recent rare protest in Eritrea. The protest occurred in October 31st on Tuesday in Asmara, and Mr. Mohammed, I'm going to call you Mohammed, is that okay?
Yes.
If you can tell us a little bit about the incident and about yourself as well.
Yeah, thank you, Petros, for having me and for bringing this issue to your program, because really it is an important event that a lot of Eritreans are interested to know, and even other than Eritreans, just to know about what happened. I think in October 31st, 2017, a rare protest happened in Asmara due to a conflict between the government and an Islamic school, a private Islamic school called Ad-Diya Islamic School. This is one of the Islamic school that is used to be a lot of them actually in Eritrea, in different cities in Eritrea, in Asmara, in Karan, in Mansoura, in Musawa. And so this is one of those schools that left actually, because many of them have been closed, their teachers has been jailed, and so they are not anymore. So this is one of those left. And it is a large school, and it is an old school. It was established in 1969, so almost 48 years old school. It is a private, community-based, community-funded school that has been running for a long time. And it hosts about 2,800 students. So it has a large number of students, and there are many students who graduated from that school that are right now in different parts of the world. And what triggered the problem is that recently the government started intervening in the affairs of the school, on how the school should be run. And this is caused a problem with the community, because the government asked or put there 3 conditions that the school has to adhere to in order to continue. And the 3 conditions violate the basic religious rights, the basic freedom of religion, the basic human rights. The first condition was for the school to stop teaching Quran, the holy books of the Muslim, the holy book of the Muslim, and Islamic studies, and then also to take the hijab or the headscarf of the Muslim female students, to remove that from them, and the third one is to mix boys and girls, in the upper classes. And of course, those 3 conditions are against the premises and the principles that the school was built on. This is an Islamic school. This is a religious school. This is not a public school. So when you ask an Islamic school not to teach Islam, it's just it's like asking a Catholic school not to teach Catholicism. It's something is not expected from a religious school to do. So the administrators and the board of the school tried to work out with the government, and they tried to tell them that this is violate our rights, and if you could not pursue these regulations. But instead of negotiating with them, they actually jailed the head of the board, who is a 92 years old man named Haji Musa Muhammad Noor, who told them that this is not acceptable for the Eritrean Muslim community, and this is an interfere in our religious rights. But they jailed him. and that's what caused the problem. And actually, the government tried also to impose a new administration on the school, and at that time, the students start throwing stones, and that's how the protest started.
Yeah, actually, you touched on the first and second questions that I was about to ask, but I'm glad you did. Haji Musa Muhammad Noor is one of the school chairperson who spearheaded the protest in a way, not physically, but they articulated some of the problem that existed within the school. They knew that the government would not allow any sort of protest. What encouraged them to do this, knowing the obvious reaction from the government?
Yeah. You know, I consider Haj Musa Muhammad Noor is a leader of necessity, a leader who finds himself in a position where he has to lead. This is not something, I don't think it's planned at all. This is just something that that person felt that this is violating their basic human rights and basic religious rights. So he actually, when the government insisted that these regulations need to be, adhered to, he went back to the community, and he has a big gathering, which was actually recorded in a video clip, and was leaked also. So we have it in the YouTube. And this person told them that this is what the government is asking, and these are just basic rights that we cannot, these are red lines we cannot cross. And we cannot remove the headscarf of our students. Those are our girls, those are our daughters, those are our sisters, and these the government is crossing the. So I don't think he planned for this, and it was just the government came to this line that people did not expect to come to that.
Okay.
And you can see the community actually applauding what he was saying, and there was cheering to what he's saying. So they were agreeing to what he said. And then when he was jailed because of just saying to the government this is not right, that's where it triggered really the protest. So that's Haj Musa Abdul Noor find himself in that position.
Yeah.
And he's a very courageous man. And the government is really, it should be shameful, because this school was built in 1969 and survived all this period of time during foreign occupation, and it still was able to survive. To have this problem in a government that is an Eritrean government, it is something that actually the government should be ashamed of. And they were not expecting that the government come to such basic things that they want them to adhere to.
Okay.
And by the way, again, this is not a public school. This is a private. There is no a penny that go from the government to this school. And that's what make it different.
Okay.
If it is a public school, sometimes the government may make that requirements. Although this is also, even in the public school, should not go to that point where you ask a Muslim woman to take her hijab, or to this is just a basic human rights. This is a basic religious right. I'm a Muslim Eritrean. I live in the United States. United States is not a Muslim country. Muslims are not a majority. But still, I send my kids to an Islamic school here in the United States, a private school, okay? And I pay for that. And the school can teach Islamic studies, can teach Quran, can teach Arabic, and all is protected. And I'm not in a country where even Muslim have a significant number on it. So for Eritrea, which Muslims is a main population there, to have that's just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. You see, I think you raised a very interesting point. Church and state should be separated. They adhere to that principle in this country. On occasion, when they violate, the population keep reminding the government that you're stepping out from what the constitution allows you to do or not. But you mentioned the three things: stop teaching religious teachings, the wearing of hijab, and boys and girls to be on the same. At this particular moment, are they imposing the government's will, or the school continue the tradition that has been going on for over 60 years?
To my knowledge, the school is closed.
Oh.
And because of this issue. And this is the condition that the government put forward so that the school can continue. And that's what we are saying, that this is really unacceptable. And by the way, this is not the first time this is happening in Eritrea. This is just the last example that we have. There are many ma'ahid or religious institutions that was closed in Musawa, in Karan, in Mansoura. And the way they were closed even was they raid these institutions, they jailed the teachers, they jailed the principals. This is in the 90s. Until today, we don't know where they are. Their own crime was just that they were teaching Arabic and Islamic studies in an Islamic schools. So we are not talking about just one incident. This has happened in many incidents. And I know personally some of those people, like the principal of a religious institution in Mansoura called Sheikh Muhammad Ibrahim Shedeli, an old man, very famous in the Agordat and in the west side of Eritrea, and Gash and Barka, very well known. This person disappeared. The government took him from the 90s and till today we don't know where he is. And this is the problem with other institutions. I want to tell you another story of another institution that was in Karan called Ma'had Ansaba, or Ma'had Wazintat. This is also one of the oldest institution, and the government also again came, raid, took the teachers, put them in jail. The elder man who founded this found it difficult for him to see his institution was closed. So he asked his second son. The first son was jailed, so he brought the second son and asked him to run the institution again. And they hired new teachers. And the institution went for like a period of time, and then the raid came again by the government. And they jailed all of them, and they jailed his second son.
Second son.
Yeah. The school, so that they don't close, what they did is they chose the brightest and the smartest and the most successful students in every class who was scoring high grade, and they made that student a teacher, so that the mission of the institution can continue. That's how the Eritrean people are so resilient, and they tried and tried, but unfortunately they are faced with a government that is just not taking care of any basic human rights.
Yes.
They're not taking into consideration.
In addition to Haji Musa Muhammad Noor, other school administrators are jailed as well, right?
Yes, Haji Musa Abdul Noor was jailed. Some of the administrators and the teachers were jailed. The information that we got also recently, that actually they have been, if they have, some of them have businesses, they're closed even their businesses. They are trying to actually punish them in a collective way.
Okay.
But the jailing did not stop on Haj Musa Abdul Noor and the administration of the school and the students, but there are some mothers have been jailed because the crackdown is not only on the school,
Okay.
but actually for some reason the government is cracking on any teaching of Quran even inside houses. They reached that point that there are some even who caught being teaching Quran, which is supposed to be something very basic, but they have been jailed. And now the number of people have been jailed in the recent incident have been mounted to be hundreds. Some of them are mothers. Actually, I was told that one of those mothers have 6 months baby, who they have to bring the baby to her from time to time just to feed that child. So to that extent it reached. And for what? For people just teaching their religion.
The religion. Yeah, in that, I want your opinion. How do you see the Eritrean government role in religious affairs in general?
You know, the United Nations Higher Commission of Refugees, they have 3 reasons why Eritreans are fleeing the country. Number 1 is the unlimited military service, and number 2 is the religious persecution. So religious persecution is actually a major problem that we have in Eritrea. As I mentioned, this is going on for a long time, and it is not only for the Muslim community. Yes, the Muslim community have been targeted heavily, but they are not the only one. Even the Christian community, there was an interference in the church. In 2007, the Patriarch Antonius was placed under house arrest for resisting the government interference in the church affairs. And still he was there. And not only they placed him under house arrest, but they stripped him out of his vestment, of his position as a patriarch. And they appointed somebody who is loyal to the government. So these are the type of government that unfortunately the Eritrean people are having, that there is no any respect to religious freedom. And I think the Eritrean Muslim community are suffering from it, and also the Christian community are suffering. So they have this notion of the way how they think to unite people is actually to eliminate their differences. And that is not the right way to do it. Diversity should be a blessing, not a curse. Diversity should enrich the Eritrean people, or should enrich any society. But unfortunately, the way they are thinking is just eliminating these differences and making it, and their understanding to the secularism is actually is totally different than what even secularism is. We live in the United States, as I mentioned to you, and people have freedom of religion. But in Eritrea, that is not the case.
Yeah, maybe it goes with what you said. Why did the government pick this moment to violate the Islamic schools' principles and others? I'm sure it's been doing it for a while.
Yes.
It has a track record.
Yes.
On the Orthodox religion, evangelical.
Yes.
Jehovah's Witness started with them.
Yes.
But why is this private Al-Dia Islamic school in a heavy-handed way?
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because the religious persecution is just one of the human rights violation that's happening in Eritrea. Just to a little bit maybe for our audience who may not know about Eritrea. Eritrea is a country that is very oppressive and known to be like the North Korea of Africa because of their the regime and the way how they act. There is no constitution that the government adhere to. There is no parliament. There is no freedom of press. There is no freedom of assembly. There is no even freedom of movement for citizens within their country. There is no even freedom to get a cell phone as a normal way. Like in Eritrea, to get a cell phone, you need, you need to wait for several months so that you can get cleared by the intelligent community, the security. So it is really, this is a country that its population is fleeing. According to many human rights organizations and humanitarian organizations, thousands of people are fleeing Eritrea. There is about 5,000, an average of 5,000 Eritrean are fleeing the country every single month. Most of them are youth, and our youth have been unfortunately ending up in the Mediterranean Ocean, trying to escape the situation in Eritrea and trying to reach to Europe to start their, a better life. So this is by itself is a sign. This is a country where the national sport team has escaped and sought asylum in Kenya in 2009.
Yeah.
This is just one example, but there are other teams who did the same. And of course, the question that you should come to your mind, if those people in the higher position, players in the national team, that should be a big thing.
Very true.
But if that person is thinking to seek asylum, you can tell that how the regular people are living. As over 62 diplomats, Eritreans, sought asylum, and that's just tell you the fear that exists within Eritrea community, within Eritrea, that people are leaving that country, unfortunately.
Yeah, you touched it, but why this moment, and particularly to the Al-Islamic school? Because it's a well-known school in Accra, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any other influence besides what is obvious, their interpretation of secularism?
Yeah, sometimes dictatorship, you don't know the way, sometimes you cannot interpret and understand the way they do things. Not all the time it makes sense. Yeah. But I think if there's any analysis for this, it will be that there is a fear of any gathering. And the Eritrean government has been living on a policy of divide and conquer all the time. That is they are very good on it, and they are very successful, and they are trying they are trying to divide even basic gathering like the school. And that's one thing that sometimes in a logic way you think, why this is happening, why the government even care, why is bringing trouble to itself. But as I said, sometimes with dictatorship you don't understand the way how they act.
Oh, perfect. Eritreans in diaspora globally reacted to the incident in Asmara. In your view, do you think this incident will transform into a solid movement?
Yeah. Eritreans really responded in a very positive way. We saw administration across the world. We saw a demonstration in London, in Stockholm, Sweden. We saw in Norway. We saw in Washington, D.C., California. Here in Minnesota, we have demonstration and protest last Sunday. So really, Eritreans are coming there to support their people in Eritrea, and to stand in solidarity with the people of Eritrea. They feel this is the least things we can do. This is just the least thing they can do, is to voice the concern and to speak out and to be the voice for those people who have been jailed, who have been suffering. And I believe personally, as a person in diaspora, that this is the least thing we can do for our people there, especially where we are enjoying our freedom here. Our people there, Haji Musa Nur, when he stood and spoke, and he was, courageous doing that, he did that while he know that he is in the hand of the dictator. Okay, so if he was able to do that, and he is 92 years old, the least things for us to do while we are enjoying our freedom is to speak out, to stand, and as you said, this movement should not stop at this. We should not be just reactionist. We should be really having a sustained movement till the underlying problem, till this regime is removed. And unless we do that, this is going to happen again and again, and this is not going to be the last example.
Good, thanks. And my last question is, there's a relative harmony, mutual respect, peaceful coexistence between the two major religions in Eritrea, Christianity and Islam, has been a national pride for all Eritreans. Would you like to comment on that part?
Eritrean diversity, including religious diversity, for me, I consider it a blessing. It's an enrichment. This is what makes Eritrea beautiful. This is what makes it unique. And it has been Muslim and Christian Muslims and Christians in Eritrea has been in harmony since Eritrea was known, from the founding fathers across the revolution time. People respected their differences, especially when it comes to religion. I lived when I was a child in Aordat, and I saw that. And I saw that there was no issue. I don't recall any issues that was surfaced between the community. They was very respectful. The problem always is that the government intervene and try to divide people and try to use these differences, this diversity that we have, to create problem between people. This has been going on for a long time. They have been they use tribes against certain tribes. They have been using certain religion against certain religion, and this is all so that they can be in the middle. They can always be able to continue and to sustain. So from my point of view, there is no problem between Christian and Muslims in Eritrea. They always have been in harmony. But our problem is that in the management, in the government, who is managing the affairs of the society. That is our main problem. And we, as Eritrean, I think we should not be falling in the same trap. We should be very smart to know that what is real and what is not real. One of the things that I like to emphasize, that sometimes when things like this happen, instead of the people focusing on the government, people start discussing, religion, interfaith, like there is a problem. Mm-hmm. And in my judgment, there is no problem. I think the problem is happening in both camp, in the Eritrean Muslim community and in the Christian community. So people should be aware and should be smart not to be in the hand of the government. Now the government, for example, in this incident, the Dia Islamic School, they are trying to politicize it. As you may know, right now the Eritrean government is in the camp of Saudi Arabia and Emirates, and that camp is in a war with, let's say, the Muslim Brotherhood, okay, in Egypt or in another place. They are trying, the Siyas is trying to put that incident within that camp. Okay, politicizing it and trying to say that those are radicalized and things like that, which the Eritrean people knows. Not only the Muslim, even the Christian knows in that community that this is not the reality. So I think the Eritrean people are aware of this, and I don't think it will go. And we saw that. Yeah. We saw Eritreans across the world standing side by side, Christian and Muslims, defending their rights, their freedom of religion. So I'm optimistic about that. I'm optimistic about that.
Maybe I should add this question to you. Recently, right after the incident in Accra, the government of Eritrea, through its media, did not directly accuse the protesters, but they start mentioning what happened some times ago. The Afghanistan involvement in Sudan, blah, blah. And that kind of message has this very subtle message saying that, well, here they come, radicalized Islam, Yeah. I don't know if you saw that on the news media, but they say that without mentioning the current incident. So that is a very dangerous move to an effort to divide the Christian community with the Muslim community. How do you view that?
Yeah, and I expect that from them because they use that tactics to scare people. And unfortunately, we are living in a time where many governments, they put whoever they don't like under the war of against terror, or and they just use that flag or that banner to fight their own political opponents. And so that is, I think it's a very clear message, but it is dangerous message. They are playing with fire. They are playing for, I think the Eritrean people will know and I think aware, but it is also dangerous because not everybody will following up what is going on in the world and why the government is using this. So we should be aware as Eritreans to avoid that, to be smart that we don't fall in that trap that the government is trying to do. And for the Eritrean government to play in, with fire between communities, that's not good. And this actually will backfire on the government, and I'm optimistic that the people understand, and we saw that actually in the community, the larger community coming out and saying, you know, we are together. Having Sheikh Musa and Patriarch Antonio's picture together and standing together, the cross and crescent, that's by itself, that's what the government do not want. The government do not want that because that means they are the problem. There is no problem in the society and in the differences and in the diversity that they have. And that's what they are scared of. So that's what makes me optimistic, that the Eritrean people, you know, they are aware. And they have been involved, Eritreans are involved in politics and, you know, for over, you know, long time, over 60 years.
Yes.
So they are aware of this, and I think they will overcome that.
Oh, okay.
Eritrean fought for freedom for 30 years till they got independence, and they fought another 26 years with this government, and they are not going to rest till they got their freedom. And I think all these years make them even better and more mature.
Okay, thank you. With that, I can't help but ask you the last question.
Yeah.
In this country, they say flicker to flame movement, meaning like if something happens, you take it to the next level. Historically, we've seen the Coptic Orthodox, the Catholics, the Evangelical separately, and now the Muslim. Even prior to that, the Muslim community has been affected, and it becomes a lonely struggle for each of them. But the government never stops from attacking this institution one by one. That's what I was asking you. This bunch of incidents has to transform eventually to a movement. So you see that light. I know one good example that I noticed last week when you guys were protesting at the state capital, St. Paul.
Yeah.
I joined you for a brief moment. I see the posters where the Patriarch and the Mufti, one on the other side, and the crowd is pretty much inclusive. I see the Christians, I see the Muslims shouting for the same justice. In that sense, do you see this thing can develop to a bigger level?
Yeah, that's a good question. That really, we need to look at the big pictures. As I said, this is not the first incident, and it's not going to be the last incident unless the Eritrean community is able to stop it. One of the problems we have, a big problem, is the fear, the fear culture that this government created among the people. And the divide and conquer policy always create an environment of suspicion, an environment of lack of trust among the communities, and they were playing on that. If you mentioned during the protest, I mentioned something, which is the story of the wolf and
I remember.
yeah, the wolf and the three bulls, and we have to be careful because we don't want to wait till it comes to us. If I see that something happened to you or the other community, I have to stand up and say this is wrong. I don't accept it. I don't wait till it comes to me. And that's what, unfortunately, that was happening to us in the last 26 years dealing with this government. And so I'm optimistic the way how the community show up. And I'm optimistic that our educated people, our leaders, will take it to be a sustained movement. A movement that is have clear purpose and take it from there so that everybody is involved, political organization, civic society organization, just the general public. We all to push in an ongoing effort, in a sustained effort, till we reach that point where we change the regime and we change the source of this problem that we have.
Thank you. On that note, we end our program, and we thank you, Mohammed Saleh Idris, Mohammed Saleh Majaurai, it's a family name, and he is an active member of the Eritrean Muslim community in Minnesota. And thank you again, Mohammed.
Thank you, Petrus, for having me.
Thank you. On that note, we end our program for today. We'll see you with a different guest next week. Until then, have a nice one. Thank you.
Thank you.